Okay, we're live now.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors and staff. We will resume the meeting at 2:21 with apologies to those who may be watching us online. We are having some technical difficulties, so please bear with us. I'll resume the agenda at agenda item 2.2, which is the date and purpose of workshops held. There was two, one on the 12th of November and one on the 19th of November. There is a recommendation on page 8. Do you have any more statements?
I'll move that council notes the information.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Young, thank you. A comment or questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is public question time. There are no questions on notice. I understand from the General Manager that we do have a question without notice at agenda item 3.2. Ask you to deal with that, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. We have a question. The question being, a permit was issued for a single-storey dwelling at 16A Chadwin Avenue, that being in Bicheno. A house is being built which is 2 metres higher than the advertised permit and is closer to the boundaries. This impinges on the neighbouring properties. Under what circumstances has council allowed this building to have an increased height and to be closer to the boundaries? What will council do to rectify this? And the response from the Acting General Manager is, an application for a dwelling was received in late 2020. The application was advertised and the permit was issued in January 2021 in accordance with the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council interim planning scheme in place at the time. This permit was not acted upon. A subsequent application was received and assessed as not requiring a planning permit in accordance with the Tasmanian planning scheme in place at that time, due to it meeting the acceptable solutions for the zone and applicable codes. As a permit was not required, there is no requirement or ability to notify adjoining properties. This building is currently under construction and will be confirmed that it is constructed to the plans submitted.
Thank you very much. So that's the only question we have.
That's correct.
I'll move on. Agenda item 4 is the planning scheme. So under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedure and Regulation 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare that council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 4 of the agenda. There is a recommendation. Councillor Edwards, thank you.
That the council now act as a planning authority at 223.
222, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor McQueenie, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 4.1 is SA 2024/026 284 Ribbon Road, Spring Beach, a 2-lot subdivision. There is a recommendation on page 21. There.
I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme Glamorgan Spring Bay SA 2024/026 at 284 Rebben Road, Spring Beach, CT 169414/1 for a 2-lot subdivision be approved with the following conditions 1 through to 27, and actually that's all 1 through to 27, and the subsequent advice provided A through to S.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Young, thank you. Do you have any issues to speak to the motion?
No.
No, not at this point. Speakers for the motion? Councillor Gregson.
Had a couple I'd like to deal with. On page 13, number 5, it's got background past applications. It's got 2 applications here, not acted upon, not acted upon. What dates are those, please? And is the applicant at both stage the same, Mr. Butler? And have not been acted on, has the expiration of 2 years?
So what page is it?
Page 13, number 5, and it's got here the following.
Background applications?
Yes, the following applications have been received since the lot was created. and it's got DA 216051 dwelling, no permit required, and it's got not acted upon. And it's got a DA 2024/152 dwelling, no permit required, to date, not acted upon. Is that the same applicant as here and for those two? And has the expiration of 2 years been exceeded?
Councillor Gregson, I will defer to Mr Woodward and for the response in relation to that. My personal view is that it has no relevance at the moment in terms, but Mr Woodward, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. 2016-051 dwelling would have been issued in 2016 or 2017. I don't have the exact dates, but that's the year. 2024/152, that was only issued this year, so that's still got 2 years to act upon it. So the 2016 one would be invalid at this stage. However, as far as the applicants, I don't have that information. I'm not.
No, that's right. That's right. No.
Ms Williams, the applicants' names I think are not particularly. I don't think that's something that we should be revealing in this.
That wasn't what I was revealing. I was
Did
just
you have
gonna-
something?
Yeah, I
did you
was
have
just going to say it was no permit required, so it doesn't actually have an expiration date. It never required a permit in the first place, so there is actually no permit. This, I think the two previous ones were both no permit required.
Yes.
This one does require a permit, so this will be the first one that has a permit
Right.
that could potentially lapse in the future.
Thank you very much, Ms
And
Williams.
also, just the next page 17, it's got here planning's response. And the second, it's got the right of ways are accessed currently by 4 lots, and there is sufficient capacity in the ROW accesses to accommodate an additional lot. Though it is noted that to date, not all of the accesses have been constructed. So who will be responsible for this and the access construction and what date?
Mr Woodward, is it you?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the person responsible will be the applicant.
Yes. And just very briefly, on page 18, with regard to the on-site wastewater system, would that be a septic tank?
Through you, Madam Chair. It would be determined by the report. The report will decide whether it's suitable for a septic tank or whether it would require a different type of treatment system, such as a aerated wastewater treatment system.
And the last one is to the mayor, is on page 21. What is way leaves? W-A-Y-L-E-A-V-E-S. It's under final plan number 3 on page 21.
What was the question? I'm sorry,
Yes,
councillor.
I'm sorry, I missed that question. You turned around, councillor Gregson, and I'm sorry I missed the
Yeah, that's
question.
fine. It's
The
fine.
can you direct your question to the microphone, not to,
Yeah,
not to
have it
Mr
turned
Woodward?
Yes,
well,
thank you.
address it, yeah. So page 21, under final plan, subheading, number 3, it's got here, the final plan of survey must include easements of all drains, pipelines, and it's got way leads. I was wondering what way leads are.
Right, thank you.
W-A-Y-L-E-A-V-E-S.
Right, Mr Woodward, can you
Through
enlighten us all, please?
you, Madam Chair. Essentially, it's the right of way.
It's the,
right of way.
thank you. Right,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Edwards?
I'd just like to say that looking at this application, we've had 70 pages of attachments. We've got, which is 140 single pages. We've got 60 pages, 30 double in the agenda, 200 pages of writing, which has cost obviously the council a lot of money to do, and our council officers a lot of money, a lot of time and a lot of effort. It has cost the proponent of this thing all of the, because I read the whole damn lot, all of the engineering reports and every other report that he's had to do. We all sit here and bleat on about affordable housing. What's the cost of this? Not only to the council, but to the person who's trying to do it. What is the cost? We really need to have a good hard look. The trust in our council officers' opinions in the first place, and cut all of this out. It's out of control.
Unfortunately, councillor Edwards, I share your concern around the amount of paperwork and that we need. This all comes under councillor Churchill and my favourite subject, the statewide planning scheme, and it's just
It's
legislative.
ludicrous.
It's legislative requirement that we can't get around, I'm afraid. I don't believe we can, Mr Woodward, that's a fair statement, isn't it? It's just, to assess anything under a development application, this is the deal. Yeah, so.
So our poor old council officers are doing all this work, but adding massive cost to both ratepayers and developers for what?
Yes.
Let's hope the Minister of Local Government is bored enough to be watching this.
Are there any other questions or comments in relation to this agenda item? Nothing further? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to close? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Then item 4.2 is DA 2024/173, 31 Douglas Street, Bicheno. There is a recommendation on page 33. Recommendations. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you. I move that pursuant to section 57 of Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme for Morgan Spring Bay, DA 2024/173 at 31 Douglas Street, Bicheno, CT 75133/6 for 2 multiple dwelling buildings be approved with the following conditions 1 to 8 and advice A to I.
Thank you, councillor Woods. Is there a seconder? Councillor Gregson, thank you. Councillor Woods, you wish to speak to the motion?
Nothing.
Councillor Gregson?
With regard to page 30, 11, and there's one single dot here, 8.0 general residential zone, 8.4.2 setbacks and building envelopes for all dwellings. It's got here A3 and unit 2 sits outside the building envelope. Could that be defined in what way it's sitting outside the building envelope, please? Not the
Mr Woodward, are you able to answer that, or Ms Williams? Ms Williams, you can. Thank you.
Yeah, so the one portion of the proposed dwelling is just sitting outside of the building envelope. So the building envelope comes into the side of the boundary and goes up and comes in at a 45-degree angle. And it's sitting just outside of the 45-degree angle, a very small marginal area. So it's not exceeding heights, it's within the setbacks, it's just this particular building envelope that we have to build within. It's sitting just outside of it, and that's the one discretion.
Thank you, Ms Williams. Any other questions? Speaker for or against the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare that council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for section 4 of the agenda. There is a recommendation on page 36. Councillor Young.
I move that council no longer acts as a planning authority and
235.
oh, sorry, yes, not quite 34.
That's right.
234, councillor. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Woods, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? And it will be recorded as 234, councillor Young.
Thank you. We have to be accurate.
But it's actually
Absolutely.
35.
I'll move on. Agenda item 5 is the financial reports. There is a recommendation on page 38. Councillor Young, thank you.
I move that council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended October 2024.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Councillor Young, do you have any comment or question?
No comment.
No comment. Any questions or comments in relation to the financial reports? Deputy Mayor, thank you.
I had a question, Madam Mayor, through you to our finance director, I would think. Just in note number 1, we've got Tassal variable water charges down on budget 35k due to no readings supplied. I was just wondering who supplies the readings?
Ms Blaine, thank you.
Yeah, it's provided by Tassal.
And sorry, through you again, Madam Mayor, is that a timing issue that it just, are they usually quite punctual with the readings? Not really.
The other issue may be that I know they've had their desalinisation vessel in the area too, so maybe they may not, they simply may not have taken any water.
Through the chair, it's likely they haven't taken water, but they still should provide.
They still have to
Yeah.
provide the readings, that's fine.
And we have followed this up and we're not getting much feedback.
Keep on to them, Ms Blaine. Any other questions or comments in relation to the finances? Nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Agenda item 6.1 is the Tasmanian Seafarers Memorial Committee minutes of the 16th of September. There is a recommendation on page 41. Councillor Edwards, thank you.
For the minutes, I recommend that the minutes of the Tasmanian Seafarers Memorial Committee meeting held on 16th of September 2024 be received and noted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? McQueenie, thank you. Any questions or comments in relation to the Seafarers minutes? Nothing further? Councillor McQueenie.
I think we've done this already in the last meeting, but just that this marks the end of this year's activities around the Seafarers Memorial and of course Kath Ferguson's contribution over many years to the process. Just acknowledging that.
Thank you. Nothing further? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 6.2 is the Visionary Hall Committee minutes of the 18th of July. There is a recommendation on page 43. Deputy Mayor.
I'll move that the minutes of the Visionary Hall Committee meeting held on the 18th of July 2024 be received and noted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Woods. Any questions or comments? Nothing further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Agenda item 7 is the information report. 7.1 is the acting general manager and director of works and infrastructure, Mr. Porter's report. There is a recommendation on page 49. Councillor Young.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council notes the information with the exception on page 45, line 9, that the potholing of Wylank Road has yet to be complete.
I thought that may attract your attention.
Could I have a seconder, please? Seconded, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Young, would you like to repeat?
With the exception of line 9, I think it's 9, whatever it is, about potholing, that the potholing at Wylank Road has yet to be completed. I know that of my own knowledge, having had to replace yet another tyre yesterday as a result of a stone going through a gravel road and then through my tyre and popping out again and down it went. And I managed to get the car to Surrey
Thank you.
and bought a new tyre
Thank
at
you.
expense.
Thank you, Councillor Young.
Otherwise, I
Porch,
think it's
where-
an eminently good report.
Mr. Porch, wearing your Director Works and Infrastructure hat, would you like to respond to Councillor Young, please?
Only to convey my, Madam Mayor, only to convey my sincere condolences in the demise of your tyre. Yes, certainly, look, unsealed roads do require continuous maintenance, and Wylangta Road is no exception to that. I have had some discussion with Councillor Young with regard to the type of material that goes on the road, and we'll be following up to see whether there's any change can be made to that in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Porch. Councillor McLean.
Just a quick comment, thanks Mayor, to the acting manager, and just to commend the fact that the disability work and access for the parks is actually happening, including some additional things for young folk who have a disability to play with, etc. in their parks. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Gregson.
One of the questions for you, Madam Mayor, to Acting General Manager Porch, is the grader turned up?
November.
Oh, has the grader arrived?
I have great pleasure, Madam Mayor, in saying that, yes, the grader has turned up.
Is it shiny?
It's very shiny, and it will be, before we put it into use, it'll be over here at the employment fair over at the
On
so
display.
that school kids can come and have a look and be inspired and
Christmas parade, may I
well,
suggest? You know?
Look, you've preempted. But yes, indeed, it will go into the
Fantastic.
Does it work, Madam Mayor? Does it work?
That's irrelevant, Councillor Young. It looks pretty.
No,
We have very.
Could I just ask for some order, please?
Sorry,
It is a formal council meeting. Councillor Edwards, do you have any other questions?
No, just to check on that.
Councillor Gregson.
Just a couple of clarifications, then I've got a couple of questions. The level 3 bridge assessment on page 44, across the river footbridge, whereabouts is that located, please, on the cross the river?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it is located on probably a couple of kilometres towards Sorel from the gorge, the end of the gorge. So you go out the other end of the gorge, a couple of kilometres further on, top of a hill, there's a driveway that you can go into, and down there is the footbridge across the crossing.
Oh, it's still within the gorge then.
Effectively, I suppose it's
Yes, good, that's all. And could you just add Naylor Avenue Bishop on page 44, just for clarification?
Page what number?
44, at the bottom dot point designs, Naylor Avenue.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Gregson has found the one omission in the town. I've left it.
Commissioner, yes. But also, I'll get these cleaned up very quickly. I still don't know where, I thought Buckland Road would be Buckland, but it's not. It's just west of Sand River Road. Whereabouts is that, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Buckland Road goes from Buckland in a northerly direction out past Sand River Road and to the boundary of council with the adjoining council.
So is that going towards Wylangta?
No.
So the way.
Wylangta south,
Yes.
Buckland Road heads north.
Oh, does it? Oh, okay. So where's the Sand River Road then?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Sand River Road is about 5 kilometres out of Buckland, north.
Good, thank you. And just, this is the street sign survey of Swansea and surrounding areas, what does that undertake? It's underway, evidently, on page 45. What does that involve,
Through you,
please?
Madam Mayor, that involves identifying where road signs that would be beneficial in terms of the street naming or other information signs are missing and should be replaced.
The major points here is that evidently on page 46, work to roll out the firefighting water tank program has commenced for 31 applicants received. 30 applications were received from Dolphin Sands, and one at Swansea. So was the one at Swansea approved? Because it's only for Dolphin Sands residents, wasn't it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it was Swansea and surrounds.
Oh, was it? Okay, good. And also the waste management. It looks like there's going to be a kiosk at Swansea and Trialbana. How will that work, please?
What are they selling?
It's a waste management. So if you get a bottle of water, you can take that back to the kiosk and get a refund.
So through you, Madam Mayor, the way that works is that these are not staffed facilities. They are simply very large boxes, effectively, at the end of the day, which have a front panel where you put your details in and you return your bottles and cans that are recyclable and for which there is a container deposit. So this is the rollout of the container deposit scheme through NRE. They've nominated these 49 or 50 odd kiosks for the state, which isn't necessarily the final number, but they'd start somewhere. So they have selected off their own initiative where those locations are going to be. They've identified these two. We made them aware that Coles Bay and Bicheno would be centres that we're likely to hear back from people saying, where is our facility? And as have other locations that are missing out on the initial rollout of these as well. But they're unmanned facilities, unstaffed. They are going to be located next to a business that can carry out the cleaning of them for some recompense. And that process is being worked through. It's really just commenced, but they'll work through that and determine where those locations are going to be.
Good, thank you. And just through that, so will the person who's returning the items, will they have to register so that identify the person who's returning the items? You'd have to register, I'm sure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is probably the case. There are options for how the funds that are being returned from the deposit can be distributed. So you can either have them put in your bank account, or you can nominate from a range of charities where you might like the funds to go to. So a way of supporting local charities and sports clubs and things like that. So there are a few different options that are involved in that process.
And my last question is, new steel door frames and door installed at Swansea Rec Ground umpire shed, was that due to the break-in or not? Or was that completely different?
Due, Madam Mayor, no, not due to the break-in. That was minor damage for that only. There's a little repair job we can do to that, but there's other repairs needed on the building and painting and things like that. So we're working our way through the process.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Councillor Churchill?
Yes, through you, Mayor, the acting general manager. The wastewater issue in Gordon Street at Coles Bay. It's good to see that appears now to be operating. My question is, it still services the other toilet block down near the shopping area, does it?
That's through, Madam Mayor, that's my understanding. Yes, what's contributing to it hasn't decreased.
Hasn't changed.
No.
Okay. Change is still there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, those against, motion's carried unanimously. Agenda item 7.2 is the Director of Planning and Development's report, Mr. Woodward. The recommendation is on page 52, Deputy Mayor.
I'll move the council receives and notes the report on activities on the Planning and Development Directorate.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Gregson, thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to?
Yeah, just through you, Madam Mayor, could I ask our Director, just on page 52, we've got an open space project that's underway. And I was just wondering about the open space planner. We've employed someone. Is that a full-time position or a part-time?
Mr. Woodward?
Through you, Madam Chair. So yes, we've employed Daniel Wilsmore, who's started with us. Daniel's on a 12-month contract, working full-time to finalise both projects.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good news. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Gregson?
On page 50, and the last paragraph, with regard to the Vision Food and Wine Festival 24, in accordance with public health, providing proof for 3,700 persons to be present on site at any one time. I thought the capacity was 3,000, so does that take in 3,700 to be patrons and stallholders?
Through you, Madam Chair. Police assembly licence is required for anything over 1,000. So on the paperwork that was submitted, it said 3,700, so I'd suggest it's people in total. So stallholders and attendees.
And also, on page 52, the sale of property of Spencer Street, Tribunna, is that a council-owned property or is that a sale of non-payment of rates?
So the Spencer Street property,
Yes.
it's council owned, it's council owned.
Oh, okay, good. I think that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Any other, councillor Edwards?
Just one quick question. Through you, Madam Mayor, the kennel licences, did that not used to be 4 dogs? Is it now 3? It's always been 3.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's always been 3, but if it is different for working dogs.
That was my confusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the director's report? Nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Move on to agenda item 8. Agenda item 8.1 is the primary care rural innovative multidisciplinary model, which is much easier to say PRIM project. And
Could you repeat the full name again,
Hub
please?
proposal. I'm sorry, councillor. Agenda item 8.1, councillor. There is a recommendation on page 55 by councillor McQueenie.
Now, I'd like to move an alternate recommendation, and that is that council, 1, commends the PRIM report commissioned by CoHealth to federal and state health authorities for consideration of implementation, and 2, proposes the Spring Bay Health Hub to state and federal health authorities for consideration.
Right, hear the last sentence again.
Sorry, the number 2 proposes the Spring Bay Health Hub to state and federal health authorities for consideration.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Councillor McQueenie, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, look, I put forward the amended motion, which essentially is the same as the one in this paper, but makes some subtle but I think important differences. For people who don't know about PRIM, and thank you, I won't go through the full one, they were, I think it's important to understand that CoHealth is associated with PRIM, but that's completely separate than CoHealth, who are delivering under contract our health services. So CoHealth was successful in gaining Commonwealth funding to do this project, which was to scope an expanded integrated health service arrangement for the primary care side of the world, which is just general practice and some community health services. And they have provided a sequence of reports which are part of this meeting. My concern is that we are clear that this isn't our work, that this is CoHealth's work, and in that context endorsing it probably wasn't the right word, but to indicate a level of support for the breadth of what they've done, knowing that they are going to of themselves present these to state and federal government, that we commend the work that's been commissioned by them as they take that work forward to those parties. So that was for the first one. So it essentially achieves the same, but it doesn't say we have an endorsing role because it's not our work. The second part was essentially, which is different, which is the proposal for a health hub in the Spring Bay region, which is those services that PRIM provides, doctors, and also community health, but adds to that a layer of aged care in an integrated service. So the two can sit together, they're not one or the other, but they're quite different in terms of that extra layer of services through aged care. And that proposal, which obviously Council's considering, was put together recognising that half the people over 70 in this municipality actually live in Tribunna and Orford, but we have no local provision for ageing in space in this region. It doesn't replace Mayshore It doesn't replace what's happening in Bicheno, but it recognises that there's a particular high volume, if you like, it's a poor word for people, but high volume of those over 70 with aged care services, and trying to do something about putting some infrastructure in place for them.
Thank you. I think you made a particularly good point around the actual PRIM report not being our report.
Yeah.
It belongs to a different group of people. So I think you've made a really good point around that. Any other questions, Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, I just have a bit of a worry about, at this stage, even though I support the Spring Bay Health Hub proposal, I'm extremely concerned that it thinks it's all going to be built for 15 million, 20 residential aged care beds, 1 to 2 year allocation for respite and palliative care, 1 to 2 bed, 4 acute urgent care beds. You can build that for 15 million. You're going to go very, very well. I worry about that.
Councillor McQueenie, I think you were the one who researched the dollar values. So would you like to answer, Councillor?
Yeah, there were several sites that industry ones as well as construction ones that refer to the cost of an average bed. Many of them sit at about 300,000 per bed. This proposal goes well and above of that amount in recognition that we're talking about rural areas. There are some fairly notable examples happening in rural areas too that point to anything beyond 500,000 would be an extraordinary thing for an aged care facility. So it wasn't dreamt up, it was based on industry published standards for those sorts of things. Obviously don't know at the end of the day.
I'm not doubting anything that you've said, but just having a bit of experience with building.
I'm happy to provide those links.
Seems incredibly cheap.
I guess the reality is, Councillor Edwards, we have to have a starting point and
maybe we should start higher and we can come back.
Councillor Young?
Madam Mayor, I note that with 20 beds residential at 750,000 a bed, and from the 1st of July this coming year, the ingoing cost that an aged care home is entitled under the federal legislation to charge has been lifted to $750,000 per room with ensuite bathroom with no other facilities having to be shared. I do think that the cost of materials and cost of buildings will skyrocket if they haven't already, as we've discovered. But it won't hurt us recommending the hub be built. If the state government's able to borrow more money to build it, good on them.
If I may, Mayor, one thing I probably should have said in the beginning, so I absolutely regarding how much it ultimately costs, and what we've used is what would be acceptable to the funders as indicators. But what you're talking about, Councillor, relates to the actual, if you like, moving into an aged care home. This funding is simply for infrastructure. So it's agnostic about who delivers it. The aged care side of it, and that's up to the state and Commonwealth under this proposal to make those decisions. Similar facilities exist with this arrangement in Tasman, in Campbelltown and in Beaconsfield. And one of those is managed by Hugh and Elder Care on behalf of the government, and the other two are managed by the state government. So those decisions are up to the state government, and the costs of moving in relate to the service you're being provided with, not the build of the actual facility in the first instance.
Thank you.
I think any other questions or comments? Councillor Gregson?
Just through that, just like Councillor McQueen, with regard to the Spring Bay Hub, the health hub, will this be funded by state, Commonwealth, or combination of both? And who basically will fund what the state's coming from, what the Commonwealth is funding? And also, do you think it's a bit of an ambit claim at the moment or not?
When you, so for your questions, so remind me if I could forget some of them if I can. In terms of an ambit claim, when you look at the data and we are intending, I think, to go out to community with this information. When you look at the data around Australia of the over 200 of these that exist that are essentially funded through the Commonwealth with cooperation with the state, the Spring Bay area fits bang in the middle of those population groups. So we're absolutely part of where that stretch of folk goes. Your other question was?
And the state and federal
Yeah.
funding. So
Yeah.
what will go state, what will go federal?
Yeah. No, good question. So this is, as I said, about building the beast, not running and delivering out of it. The Commonwealth funds medical, like doctors, etc. It also funds some areas of community service provision, and it also funds aged care. The state government funds a lot of the community type services, community nursing, etc. It also funds what are called subacute beds or step down beds, so people who have been in the Royal Hobart or Launceston General who don't need to be in such an intensive place where a bed could be used for further surgery for others, but need 24-hour nursing. So the state funds those. So ultimately this is about saying if the health hub is built, all those existing funding would then be part of what takes that facility forward and how it's managed. The value of this sort of model is that you don't have to open a 60-bed aged care new facility in towns of this size. So the other three in Tasmania have about 22 beds each, and continue to be funded as that funding flows for aged care and GPs currently. Is just about drawing it together at scale for a rural area.
And just really, who will fund the infrastructure?
That's what this proposal is for, just the infrastructure.
And that will Commonwealth will stay.
This proposal says Commonwealth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, any other questions or comments? Councillor McCready, just for me to clarify, what was the wording that you used in the second part? Was it proposed the Spring Bay Health Hub to? No. What was it?
Proposes that we, Council, proposes the Spring Bay Health Hub to state and federal health authorities for consideration.
So my understanding of that is by if you like endorsing this proposal today inside this meeting, it gives us a more substantial influence on federal politicians with the coming election.
Yes, which isn't a bad thing to do.
Which isn't a bad thing to do. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Madam. I just wonder whether we would be better off throwing our weight behind Mayshore. And I wonder whether we're better off throwing our weight behind Mayshore and trying to hit the federal government up coming to an election for support for them, which is in an existing facility and could maybe be
Councillor Edwards,
better spend the dollar.
My understanding of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor McQueenie, but my understanding of this is that it's pretty much to some extent dropped out of the Prim report, which is future proofing health in our area, across our municipal area. So it's about future proofing for the older population in this area who they don't necessarily want to travel to Swansea.
If I can,
Councillor McQueenie.
Mayshore, if you look at what this municipality should have by the Commonwealth's own formula, we should be having between 69 and 90 beds.
Yeah.
So Mayshore's already put in an application for expansion, which should be supported. But that does, even with that, there are extra beds to be had, and with over half of the population of people who are over 70 existing in the Tribunna and Orford area, and that doesn't include Buckland and other places, there's room for both. So,
through you, Madam, whilst I completely agree with you that we desperately do need something, but I'm just going for a more pragmatic approach. If I was the minister sitting there, I'd be thinking, well, here's a facility which already exists, where the cost of expansion will no doubt be a lot less than going to a greenfield site. So I'm just thinking of the use of the government, which is by the by, really. They can decide whatever they want. Yeah. Whilst I agree with you, it'd be fantastic to have something here, but I don't know whether we'll get
equally, I think you could.
Hope we do.
Yeah. Equally, the ministers may think about where as often health policy is data driven, where are the people that need this? Where would you sensibly put this going forward? And the further concentration above what Maisha are already wanting to get. I'm not sure that having sat in those desks in the bureaucracy and minister's office, equally they could say we need to make sure that we're providing ageing in home in different places and where it's needed most.
So councillors, I might just mention that between Councillor McQueen and I, we have raised this in an informal manner with federal and state politicians, and their reaction has been quite positive.
Yeah.
So that's why we because this proposal went into our prospectus. Thank you. Went into our prospectus. The general manager suggested that it should go into the prospectus just before the state election. I think is that the timing? No, it was about there. And the general manager, Mr. Ingham, suggested it should go into our prospectus to give it more influence. It's been decided that we should bring it to council to get the backing of the elected member group. So that's why it's here on the agenda now. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Is that the amendment?
Those against? It's not an amended motion, Councillor Gregson. It is the motion. It is a different motion to what was in the what the recommendation was, but it was moved as a substantive motion by Councillor McLean. It's not an amended motion.
Madam Mayor, did it pass?
Pardon? I'm just about to announce that. I'm just clarifying for Councillor Gregson that it is not an amended.
Voted for it.
Right. So I believe that it was carried unanimously, Councillor Gregson. Thank you. Agenda item 8.2 is the Strategic Asset Management Plan version update. There is a recommendation on page 58. Councillor Young, thank you.
I propose that council adopts the draft strategic asset management plan and uses this as a primary information source in the review of the long-term financial plan.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Councillor Young, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just the workshop the other week in Swansea, I found particularly useful. I didn't think it would have been useful. It was useful, and this is the consequence of that workshop, I assume.
This is a different document. Mr. Hawkins, I think it is a different document, Councillor Young. The Swansea one you're talking about was Council's overall strategic plan. This is the asset management strategic plan,
Well,
which
if it's
Mr.
as well
Forge has.
designed as the one at Swansea, I think it warrants voting.
Any other questions or comments in relation to this, Councillor McLean?
I'd just like to say, having come more recently to council and seeing the response to the strategic the directions given by state government, to see the long-term financial management plan and this in the strategic plan all come together is incredibly pleasing, and well done to the directors around that work.
Councillor Churchill, and then Councillor Edwards.
Just by way of comment, the asset management is one of the really big issues that council faces. That when I came on the council a few years ago now, it was hardly even mentioned. It wasn't mentioned until it was clearly pointed out to us in the PID that it was something we needed to attend to, and the benefits of all that work now are being shown. We know what we have. We've got policies around managing our assets, and I think council's come a long way on the back of all that work that's been done.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Edwards, I have you.
Yeah, I was just on page 323, Appendix B, IT and office equipment. When you go out to the year 9 or year 10, $528,970 seems like an incredibly large amount of money. Parks, stormwater and drainage, 366,000. No, next one, 381,000.
Sorry, councillor, if we've got pages.
Yeah.
323
In the attachments.
in the attachments. It just seemed to me to be, we've gone from 273,000, which is a massive amount of money now, to 528,000 for IT and office equipment. Blimey heck, we buying a Starlink satellite.
Mr. Forge?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, we probably won't be buying a Starlink satellite, but the reality is that IT and office, well, IT particularly, is not something that has come down in price. And our reliance on those systems increases. And part of that reliance does provide efficiencies within the working space. We're projecting increases there in the future for those, and they're our best expectations of what the likely costs are going to be renewals for those.
Just appears when it's about 150,000 more than stormwater and drainage. Surely to goodness we can find a cheaper way of doing things.
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Massive.
these are renewals. And
Yeah.
so the renewals are based on what we expect to be replacing in those years.
But it'd be nice to get rid of the backlog too, wouldn't it? To quote Mr. Porch. Yeah, just want to make the point.
Any other questions or comments?
Just to reiterate, with the increase or replacement of the IT renewables, that basically by doing that you can't afford not to, because you're increasing productivity. If you're not upgrading your IT, you're left behind substantially.
Who's left behind?
Well, council are basically, if you're not renewing your IT and keeping up to date with that, and also productivity, that's what it's all about, increasing productivity. Whereas if you don't do it and you're left behind in the IT world, you're non-competitive basically.
Councillor, I can't work my computer now. And I come and I get these things printed out.
I'm working off paper.
Because of the fact
Councillors,
that,
councillors, can I please remind you, we are in a formal meeting.
God forbid, another 1,000 of these to increase our productivity.
Is there any other questions or comments in relation to the draft strategic asset management plan? Nothing further? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Agenda item 8.3 is the revised policy for council meeting, audio-visual recording and live streaming. Deputy Mayor Simons, thank you.
I'll move that council adopts the revised council meetings, audio-visual recordings and live streaming policy as attached to this report item effective 26th of November 2024.
Seconder, Councillor Young, Councillor Churchill, sorry. Moved by Deputy Mayor Simons, seconded by Councillor Churchill. Deputy Mayor Simons, do you wish to speak to the motion at this point, or?
Yes, I will at this point. I won't be supporting the motion. This has been discussed at a workshop level, and I'm just not convinced it has any advantages for this council. It complicates the process of being able to have open conversations in matters regarding personnel and other sensitive commercial discussions. It adds another layer of complexity to for the management to have to administer. I've had numerous conversations with business and community leaders that are familiar with the pros and cons of recording confidential sessions, and they have all categorically been of the opinion that the taking of written minutes is more than sufficient. And that's also my experience in my time on council, so I'm going by a little bit of lived experience here. So that's some of the reasons. I'll have a little more to say further on.
Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please, yeah, I do. I think we've got to a point where our governance needs some serious improvements, and I think history is showing us that at the moment. The way this is being designed and fashioned to be used, in other words, it is recorded and it is only for the period from recording until those minutes are formalised at a meeting. In other words, they're approved through the meeting. So the life of this high value recording, I don't mind whether it's visual or not, but I think audio at least is, and it might as well be visual, but I think it's going to decomplicate the work of our officers in recording those meetings, and I don't see that anything is going to be lost if we're serious about that word transparency, which I hear used quite a bit, but I don't see a lot of it being held to. And if we're serious about that, I think any improvement in our governance, and especially something as relatively simple and inexpensive as this, probably would actually pay for itself in terms of the time. There should be less time required in the recording of those minutes with the use of that technology. So it just seems crazy to me not to support this motion. I do have issue with this moving of motions in council and not being supported by the mover. There's a certain element of dishonesty around that I have trouble coming to grips with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woods, you had your hand up.
I did. I'm sorry, I can't believe the last comment of Councillor Churchill, but anyway.
Councillor Woods and Councillor Young.
So I have a question on with regards to this, and that is 2.2.3 under recordings of closed council meetings. It says, in accordance with local government meeting procedures regulations 2015 R15(9), the recordings of closed session meetings are to remain confidential and not to be released to the public unless council resolves to do so. The recordings will then be kept in a secure location on council management systems where access is strictly limited to the general manager and the minute taker. If a right to information is applied for information, can that be applied to these?
It's more than I can tell you, Councillor Woods. It's a technical matter that I need to get some advice on in relation to the RTI requirements.
The reason why I asked that, if I may, Madam Mayor, is that, you know, there are rights that people, it's in our agenda, our ordinary agenda, that at the end of it, what we're going to be discussing. So the community can see what we are discussing, but it's in closed session for a reason. And if people decide they think, oh, that's going to be a bit, I need to know more information about that, can they apply for use the right to information on that? And they're bearing in mind it's all sensitive conversation that we are having. That's why it's in closed session. Yeah, I'm happy for that to be taken on notice. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And the transparency, like Councillor Churchill spoke about, how can you put transparency in something that is closed to the public for a very good reason? I mean, it's not like we are transparent in my opinion, we are transparent enough within the general ordinary meeting agenda, saying what we're going to be discussing. However, as I said before, it's in closed session for a reason, and that is commercial in confidence, that is sensitive to personal matters, that is various reasons. Otherwise, it will just go into the open meeting and we'll just go hell for leather, isn't in my thoughts. Thank you, Mick.
Just from Councillor Young. Councillor Wood, you've raised a very interesting question about RTI. I don't know what the answer is, and it's something that we will need to look at. I know there is provision under RTI for what's called third-party emissions, and that may be that the RTI, an RTI requirement or request, the decision to release it could be made by the council, or not made by, or not released to be made by the council. But there, I know there's timeframes on RTI, so it's something that we'll have to get officers to deal with. Mr. Woodward, you've got an answer, have you?
Yeah, I think,
Yes, by all means. Or Mr. Porch, thank you.
Madam Mayor, yes, our very efficient staff have brought up the Right to Information Act 2009, and there are provisions in there for withholding information associated with closed council meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Right, Councillor Young.
Madam Mayor. I don't support this motion, not because it is a good or a bad idea to record meetings. And I don't support it because Regulation 34 and Regulation 33 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations deal with the issues of recording. Regulation 33 says the council may determine that an audio recording is to be made of any meeting or part of a meeting. Now, that's a general power given to council. And then it goes on to say, if the council so determines the audio recording of a meeting or part of a meeting that's not closed to the public is to be retained and made freely available. And that deals with the right for council to decide about recordings. But if you look at the minutes of the closed meeting, Regulation 34, sub-regulation 2, there's a mandatory requirement, that is compulsory requirement, that has to be followed by the general manager. And it says the general manager is to record in the minutes of a closed meeting certain matters. And it says the minutes of the closed meeting are to be kept confidential. And this council authorises the release. And it seems to me that Regulation 34 gives the power to the manager to decide how the record is to be kept and in what manner. And we, by passing a policy saying that closed meetings can be recorded or shan't be recorded or shall be recorded in this manner or that manner, is an attempt to take away the power given to the general manager in his or her discretion to record the minutes in any way that he or she should so desire. And it's not for us to take away a power given by government legislation. We can direct a recording, but we can't prohibit a recording should the general manager so desire. So I think it's not for us to impose extra restrictions on the question of recording minutes of closed meetings. We don't have the power. There's no benefit. The power's in the general manager. If he mucks it up or she mucks it up, the general manager cops it in the neck. So I'm going to oppose this because it's an attempt to restrict the effect of legislation.
Thank you, councillor Young. Councillor McLean.
Just before I go on to my view, I'm actually not quite sure what Councillor Young was suggesting in terms of 33(1), which says a council may determine that it be made at any, for a whole meeting, any part of the meeting. I don't think we're usurping the general manager's role in recording, making note of the minutes, but so I'm not quite sure where the argument lies in that. What I wanted to say was, though, that I agree in terms of the efficiency of this. I agree in terms of clarity and assistance for those taking notes. The notion that holding of a recording simply for that period where it's agreed, whatever passed by council, is going to expose potentially through foul means access to commercial and confidence information, which is held in detail, expansively in the documents we get. It just doesn't make sense to me that information exists. This is done, and I'm heartened about the freedom of information question, because I think that was important to clarify that we can make provisions for that. This is done by a bundle of councils already. This is done by a bundle of boards and others that already do it, and I guess the resistance to something that can improve the production of minutes, can be easily managed in terms of the accuracy of them, disappears after a month without any freedom of access, freedom of information, that would be a skerrick of what the documents that we actually do hold that could be got by foul means for IT. So it's just good common practice increasingly in governance, and that's what I think we should be focused on. And with it being destroyed after a month, with the provisions that it's managed entirely by the general manager, I don't know why we wouldn't actually do something that improves circumstances.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this, basically. It's a very short time period from recording to the written minutes. And I know it's not Hansard, but if there's any controversy that can be looked at, the recording can be looked at, compared, and then written. On page one thing I do have a question about is on the attachments, page 329, because 2.4.5, the general manager may access the recordings of a closed council meeting for any purpose deemed necessary in the performance of their duties, except where the general manager was excluded from the closed meeting under regulation 15(6)(b) of the Local Government Meetings Procedures Regulation 2015, or was absent due to a declared interest. This exception also applies to council officers. There's an assumption that the last sentence, the exception also applies to council officers. Oh no, I'm under the impression that it was only the general manager and the minute taker, and no one else would have access to that.
That's would be accurate, I believe, Councillor Gregson. I guess the concern here, and Councillor Edwards, if I may, could I make a comment now before you?
Yeah.
I won't support the motion today, only because I would like to see stronger protocols put into the policy around terminating the recording of closed sessions when discussing personnel matters. Now, the reason is very simple, and that is because under the policy as it sits, the general manager has a general manager, not the general manager. A general manager has access to the recordings. if we were to do a performance review or the like, that would be recorded and it's recorded. The general manager then has access to that, despite the fact that we have had the general manager leave the room. Personnel matters also, we generally have all staff leave the room. I think it's unfair to record personnel matters and then have the minute taker, whoever that might be, the person who's producing the minutes, have access to that information. It's just simply not appropriate in my view. Because we do exclude the general manager from, for example, his key performance, his performance review. And as I said, we do exclude the staff. So I have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with recording the closed session if we can get some stronger protocols around terminating the recording during the discussion on personnel matters. That's where it was.
I mean, I've just got a few little points. I too have had discussions with people about this, and I've had a lot of concern from various people. As far as the freedom of information business goes, I used to be chair of an IVF ethics committee in New South Wales, and they changed the law. And so when I was on the committee, you couldn't find out who the sperm or egg donor was. After a while, they changed the law and you could. So it's really is the law today, it isn't tomorrow. To say transparency and confidentiality, I agree with Councillor Woods. That's a bit like, you know, expecting Carlton and Collingwood. The two things are completely in different camps. I just see it as a way that will restrict debate and restrict people's faith in their information they deliver being confidential. Now, I know that some of the councillors have mentioned previously that they trust the systems here to keep the stuff confidential. Well, I just did a quick Google search. Optus, Medibank, Australian National University, Eastern Health, Service New South Wales, Tas Ambulance, Parliament House, Melbourne Heart Group, Northern Territory and Western Australian Parliament all got severe data leaks, serious data leaks. And there was a couple of other, those weren't the biggest. The biggest were Canva and Latitude, two companies I'd never heard of. But those, I'm pretty sure that their IT security is probably a little bit better than Glamorgan and Spring Bay's. But, you know, it's no disparaging thoughts on ours. Also, it was mentioned at the workshop by one of our officers that whatever protocol we put in place, nothing is guaranteed. Other people, you know, maybe the IT provider or other people in other places can access things. And to me, if I'm an investor coming here with a lot of important financial information and an open and free discussion where you can actually say what you think without fear of favour, I don't want that recorded and not knowing where it's going to end up. That's my
Everybody has
point.
spoken.
Can I just have, at your discretion, just a brief comment on that?
I think the debate around this matter warrants further discussion if councillors have others. So I'm happy to allow the comment, councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just that at the end of all this, you've still got the printed copy of those minutes somewhere forever. Why is that suddenly not a security risk where the audio visual is? I mean, I just don't quite get that. I don't understand.
I think from my perspective, if it's recorded, then the discussion is recorded, which is not recorded in the written version of the minutes. We don't have Hansard minutes. And so that's where my concern is around this. How would the minutes be prepared if we were discussing a matter of a personnel matter, for example? It is unfair, as I said, in my view, to expect an officer to access that recording to do the minutes when they've been excluded from the discussion for confidentiality reasons.
The same could be argued for the written copy.
The written minutes though, councillor, only generally record the outcome.
So we're happy to accept less accurate recording of the event through that.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting at
We need
all.
to debate it.
We do our minutes in accordance with the local government minute taking guidelines, and that is it. So if we're going to change the minutes for closed sessions, then it probably stands to reason that we need to change our minutes for open. If we're going to put the debate in our closed session minutes, then why don't we put the debate in our current minutes? And the short answer is because Councillor McQueenie, I'll get to you in a sec. The short answer is we don't have Hansard minutes. And also inside this chamber, we do not have parliamentary privilege. So we have to be very aware of comments that made that could be taken as offensive by someone. Councillor McQueen.
Yeah, just a few things. In terms of your suggestion comment about those particular circumstances, I don't see any problem with some words to cover that, just as I think it should talk about the freedom of information as an inclusion. So I think what you're describing could be like 2.4.6, that where an employee has been excluded or whatever. Like, to me, that's just another part of the policy, and I think that's worthy what you're suggesting, that they shouldn't be available. I'm concerned, and the reason for the hand straight up was I don't envisage that having the recording means that debate goes in the minutes. It's quite clear in the meeting regs what goes in the minutes. It's motions, it's whatever, it's statements, it's whatever, right? So it's not like an expansion, it's an attempt to make sure that they're accurate, and if there are differences of opinion, then the person who drafts them would go back, listen and redraft based on discussion. So and if they are destroyed, and I think that point about destroying them is also important, and let's put that in here, how it's responsible and whatever. But they're just minor things that can be addressed through agreed process.
So Councillor, I agree with you. I agree with you totally, and that's where I'm coming from right now. That this needs to be resubmitted to a council meeting with those amendments to cover those eventualities.
Well, I would support that.
So, Councillor Gregson, then Councillor Young, and then I'm going to ask Councillor Jeremy Mayor Simons to close debate.
My original question still hasn't been answered.
Which is what?
Page 329, and just like the exception also applies to council officers. I thought council officers weren't involved. I thought it was only the general manager and the minute taker.
Which is exactly what we've just been discussing.
Yes, that's what I thought.
And that comes back to my point that this document needs to be reworked and submitted to another council meeting to cover all the things that's been raised around the table today.
I don't have any objection to the recording at all, and the destruction of them after 30 days, whatever it is. And I realise it's not going to be enhanced that, but also your point of having a few amendments would not be such a bad idea, provided it does go through as a video audio recording. So yes, I'd agree that you can have amendments to it, and it's better than nothing, basically.
Councillor Young, then I'm going to ask the Deputy Mayor to close debate.
2 points. I have personal knowledge of a leak of the confidential meeting that was last held. Personal knowledge. And secondly, because in Regulation 33 a council may determine that a recording is to be made, it doesn't necessarily result in, if no such determination is made, that the general manager shall not do it. and the power to the general manager is absolute in the following regulations 34. Nothing else to say.
Councillor Woods, then I'll
I know you said
Yes.
that, but I just thought that I would like to move a
can,
amendment. pretty much.
can,
No, it's okay, withdraw. Withdraw, yep.
Deputy Mayor Simons, would you care to close debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, just firstly, I'd like to totally reject Councillor Churchill's assertions that it would somehow be dishonest to not support a motion. I'm disappointed you made those comments in an open meeting. As far as this goes, the minutes are taken in a confidential meeting and they reflect the combined position and actionable decisions of the council as a whole. Now, that discussion to achieve that position is a reflection of the individual councillors' views and thoughts. That's how we all come to a collective decision. For the future, that recording shouldn't be available, in my mind, for future scrutiny by staff or other unknown people if there's a leak. So that's my thoughts on that at a future time. So it's just not relevant to me. I'm quite happy with the way the minutes are at the moment, and I think we're just creating a solution to a problem that's not there.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? So those in favour, Councillor Churchill and Councillor McQueenie and Councillor Gregson. Those against? Councillor Edwards, Councillor Young, Councillor Woods, Deputy Mayor Simons, Mayor Arnold. Thank you. The motion is lost. Thank you. Move on. Agenda item 8.4 is the Hobart Airport flight path change proposal. There is a recommendation on page 63. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
I move that council provides a response to the flight path consultants advising of its preference for recommended action 4, pointing out the impacts to tourists visiting Maria Island's natural amenity.
Is there a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Simons, thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak to the motion?
It seems to be, from what I'm able to read in our reports, that this has the least impact of the options on most places, but certainly on our community. And I think the issue of its proximity to Maria Island is particularly important from a tourist point of view. I don't think we want to risk any impacts in that sense. And I guess my other concern is probably a little bit cynical, but if this is the commencement of something that might come when we get larger aircraft flying into here, and they are then used because we are using new pathways, which could even have further impact over time. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. I should perhaps clarify for Council. This matter arrived on our agenda because I was approached by a member of the public in relation to it and their concerns for the matter. I then approached the General Manager in relation to actually having Council having a conversation around it and establishing a position on it. Councillor Edwards and then Councillor McQueenie. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Edwards?
Yes.
You did. Yes,
Yeah.
Councillor Edwards, then Councillor McQueenie, then Councillor Gregson.
I've alerted a few people locally because a lot of people have got no idea that this was even on the agenda, and without every single one has been horrified at the prospect of, and even when you read the report, you know, the noise of up to a vacuum cleaner, which I happened to be doing this morning, roaring down the Mercury Passage over Maria Island. This does hardly seem to be appropriate. Where it appears to me that the resident, a resident of Dodges Ferry, who's put in 90-something% of the complaints about the noise, is trying to shift his problem onto residents of Glamorgan Spring Bay. It's not our problem. We want it nowhere near us. Thank you very much. It's it just it appalls me to think that somebody who's gone on the Maria Island Walk, which is all about nature and associated things, is suddenly going to have jets roaring overhead. It's complete madness. The action 4, I think we should reject it full stop and say you can stick where you're going, thank you very much, and don't worry about action 4. Action 4, which is the green line, I'm presuming, on the map, does appear to be better than 6, but why do we have to compromise?
Councillor Edwards, I take your point that how many people actually know about it. Mr. Porter, I understand there was a public meeting in the Carvana Hall where there was a number of residents actually attended that over a period of time to actually look at this. And that's how this, if you like, dropped out into our agenda because one of the residents that was at there contacted me. So
If I can just add to that,
sure.
if you don't mind, through you, Mayor. I saw it on a Facebook thing for Sorrel, and I alerted the Orford Shack owners to put it on their Facebook page, and because people had no clue that it was even contemplated. So, you know, the old story of let's have a public meeting at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday when nobody can show up.
It was advertised in the Mercury. I did see it. in
But
public notice.
I don't read the Mercury. Who does?
You should. It's the most important paper of the
Councillor
country.
Young, please. Is nothing further, Councillor Edwards?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Right, Councillor McCready?
Yeah, I can't remember where I saw it, but I did see it for Tribunal and I called the general manager before it happened, who said that there had been no separate approach to council.
No.
So we didn't get to know that. I mean, I just think, and taking on board the apparent 90% plus complaints from one resident pushing this forward, it's a question whether there's a problem at all. But for me, it beggars belief that you would throw planes over a national park and a iconic tourist area. And not, when you look where that part of that journey is, there's basically 2 very tiny settlements that it would go over. So I just think it's quite outrageous that you would create that sort of noise pollution and experience in one of our state's iconic areas for no particular good reason.
Councillor Gregson.
Right. I was one of the very few people who attended that meeting at the Tribunal Hall on the 14th of November, and based on there was a flyer placed in the lead boxes at Swansea, I know, and you had to go through a QR code to find out location, etc. And I was quite surprised that Tribunal was included. So, on the advice of a number of residents who were quite concerned, they said, "You turn up and find out what's going on." So that's what I did, and it was quite good. It was quite a good meeting. You could just drop in between 11:30 to 1:30 or 2:30 on that day, and they gave 2 handouts here, consisting of 2 pages each, and I can leave these here to be distributed at the public notice board
Reception
outside.
area.
Yes, and if people want to have a look at that, they were very informative, and they really wanted feedback basically. And I went to the acting general manager, and I said, "Look, Mr. Porch, a number of people don't really know what's going on, and as a public service, would you mind if I put in just a bit of a thing, an advertisement, a community notice in the what do you call it, the Great Oyster Bay Community News?" He said, yes, that's all right, but it's, I said, won't be a council or anything like that. I'll just put it in because the feedback has to be by the 1st of December 2024. And I'll just read out what's in the, and I think it might be in this week, it was certainly in last week, because I have a copy here of Tuesday the 19th of November 2024. And it's got Air Services Australia, which is the federal government department, are seeking community and industry feedback by the 1st of December 2024 on a new option for an alternative flight path to Hobart Airport via the East Coast. which may impact the townships of Tribunna, Orford and Spring Beach within the municipality of Warm Spring Bay. For more information, engage.airservicesaustralia.com/Hobart-community. So if people want to put their feedback, of which Air Services Australia are asking for, it must be by the 1st of December, and they really want to hear your feedback from that. So I'd advise people who are really interested in that to put their feedback in that form. And if council wanted to make a formal application, it would have to be by the 1st of December.
Are there any other questions or comments in relation to this matter?
If I may, I do know of a couple of local businessmen who was looking to employ someone to gather more information and find alternatives on this travesty at the moment, and so I will alert him. He probably knows, to the fact that the 1st of December is the closing date, which seems to be incredibly quick. There's a very short lead time. I wonder why that is, because let's get it through while nobody knows anything about it.
Unfortunately, councillor, consultation periods dealing with both federal and state government do tend to be incredibly quick. We are not always given a lot of time.
Is
If
it,
there's nothing further on this, I will.
is it possible to change the motion to advising of its preference for nothing to change?
I
Not
need
go
to
for
put the
full?
motion, and you could put a foreshadowed motion if you want, but.
Is it sensible, or?
Madam Mayor,
Seeking
I would
advice.
foreshadow a motion that this council recommends to the authority that the existing flight path be maintained as to, because the acceptance of the proposed variation will adversely affect the tourist quality of the east coast of Tasmania to the detriment of all Tasmania.
Lovely.
Now, of course, Mr. Gregson's written that down, so I don't have to
I need to get a seconder. We need to let Mrs.
We can reread that out for you. if you like.
Please, that would be great. Councillor Young, Mr. Woodward's going to read the motion as it's been typed, so would you please
I'll listen.
provide your agreement or otherwise? Thank you, Mr.
If he
Woodward.
reads it slowly.
That council provides a response to the flight path consultants advising that the existing flight path be maintained because the acceptance of the proposed variation will adversely affect the tourist quality of the east coast of Tasmania to the detriment of all Tasmanians.
Isn't that iconic?
What does iconic mean? If you look it up in the dictionary, it means statue.
It means you, Robert.
Just sort of,
It means a statue.
it would be better to say retain than maintain. Retain, wouldn't it?
Yeah, retain it should be.
Retain, it should be retained,
Yeah.
councillor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Gregson. I'm sorry I didn't pay adequate
Right, do I have a
attention.
seconder for the foreshadowed motion?
But the east coast also, it's not affecting
Has
all
Mr.
the east
Gregson
coast.
seconded
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No, hang on.
No. Councillors, please, I need to remind you again that we are in a formal meeting and it's one person at a time.
Just,
Councillor Edwards, did you second that
Yes.
foreshadowed
Madam Mayor.
motion? Thank you.
just matter of clarification. It's not through there. It's not affecting all the east coast. It's mainly the southeast, basically, and in particular, Tribunna, Orford, Spring Beach, going through Mercury Passage. So it's not really affecting all the east coast at all. It's just mainly the southeast coast of Tasmania.
That's where our municipality is, Councillor Gregson.
It's a-
Southeast Tasmania.
Councillors, please. Mr. Woodward, I need some guidance here. This is a foreshadowed motion rather than an amended motion. So I need to put the original motion first. If that is then lost, we put the foreshadowed motion. Yes? Thank you. So the original motion was moved by Councillor Churchill and seconded by Deputy Mayor Simons. That is that council provides a response to the flight path consultants advising of its preference for recommended action 4, pointing out impacts to tourists visiting Maria Island's natural amenity. I will put that motion. All those in favour? Councillor Churchill and Mayor Arnold. This is the first motion.
Yeah.
This is the recommended motion. Those against? Against, we have Councillor Edwards, Councillor Gregson, Councillor McLeany, Deputy Mayor Simons, Councillor Woods, and Councillor Young. I take it you're against the first motion.
Yeah.
Thank you. The motion is lost. I will now put the foreshadowed motion moved by Councillor Young and seconded by Councillor Edwards. So foreshadowed motion is put. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Can I, for the people watching, I just want to make people aware that the Civil Aviation, I believe it's consultative group, CACG, meets monthly at the airport. People from down the Tasman Sorell area who have been concerned about this have been attending. So the folk you mentioned, Councillor Edwards, may wish to know
Yes.
that there is a meeting, there is a monthly ongoing meeting between the Civil Aviation Authority,
Thank you.
CACG.
Thank you, councillor. We'll move on. Agenda item 8.5 is the Glamorgan Spring Bay Audit Panel Annual Report. There is a recommendation. Deputy Mayor Simons, thank you.
I'll move the council receives and notes the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council Audit Panel Annual Report for 2023 and 2024.
Seconded, councillor Churchill. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, other than well done to the audit panel. They're a really professional group of people, and it's a pleasure to sit on that board and observe.
Councillor Churchill, do you wish to add anything?
No, I don't need to add anything further. I agree with the Deputy Mayor's comments, and they certainly are some highly qualified people. We're talking about the externals here, by the way, not us, and our own staff as well. So there is some great expertise on that, and I think that's borne out by the response from the Tasmanian Audit Office.
I think as a council, we need to count ourselves lucky that we have the independent members of the audit panel that we do. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Oh,
Don't think you called for speakers.
I've already put the motion, councillor, I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Um,
I'm happy to ask it after,
okay,
because it doesn't change my vote, I'm sure.
so you voted for the minutes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The motion is carried unanimously, thank you.
Just a question.
No, I'm sorry, you can't ask the question after the motion's been put,
Yeah, no,
councillor.
it's not about that.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You can't
You
ask a
have my
question
hand up.
after the motion's been put, I'm sorry. Out of session, is there a question you could ask out of session, councillor?
Yes.
Okay, you might. Thank you. Agenda item 8.6 is the community small grant application for Freycinet Volunteer Marine Rescue Association. There is a recommendation on page 68. Did anything?
I'll move that council approve the application for community small grant funding of $1,000 to the Freycinet Volunteer Marine Rescue Association Incorporated towards the boat catch for the rescue vessel.
Thank you, councillor Woods, thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to comment?
No, it's a self-explanatory, very good group.
Questions or comments? Councillor Churchill, thank you.
Just to say, let's help them in any way we possibly can. It's one of the most important organisations that we have in our whole council area.
Councillor Woods?
Can I just have a second? Should find it.
Okay.
Very interesting reading the application for it and the explanation about actually what this VMR, whatever it is, whatever, what is it, the
Volunteer Marine Rescue.
what they're wanting to apply it to. Where was it? It was it's in the,
It's page 341.
it basically is a safety mechanism in the sense that it stops people standing behind utes, trailers, and on trailers or in the water and all that sort of stuff. So for those that don't know what it is, that's what that's. And it was a very good, well-written application, actually. I did think. Yeah, thank you very much, Ned.
Thank you. Any other comments in relation to this matter? Councillor Gregson?
Through me, I'd just like to concur with Councillor Churchill. This is an excellent organisation that's built up over many years and has become extremely competent. So congratulations to them.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion carries. Thank you. Noting that it is only seven councillors. Thank you. Agenda item 8.7 is the community small grant application for the Swansea Local Events Committee. There is a recommendation on page 71. Councillor Woods?
Thank you. I move the council approve the application of community small grant funding of $1,000 to Swansea Local Events Committee, Hospice by Swansea Community and Menshare Incorporated, to support insurance and entertainment at Swansea Car, Bike and Truck Show on Saturday, the 19th of April 2025.
Seconder? Seconder, Councillor Gregson. Thank you. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to the motion?
They clearly on the front put of everything they're doing, considering it's not until April, but they clearly want to get their ducks in a row, and we'll certainly support it.
Councillor Gregson, you wish to comment?
No.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments in relation to this matter?
I'll just make the point that it is an event that's having some good growth. Each year it's getting a little bigger and a little better organised, and good on them for doing it.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8.8 is another community small grant application for the Friends of Buckland Church. There is a recommendation on page 74. Councillor McLeany?
I move the council approve the application for community small grant funding of $700 to Friends of Buckland Church for their choir fee, lorries, and soft drinks for the Buckland Christmas Carols event.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Edwards, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, just that I've attended it in the past and it's a lovely event. It brings out people of all ages and the setting is perfect, of course, for Christmas.
And the way we have at the moment of such difficulties in and across many communities in terms of cost of living and everything, I think that this will bring some joy to a lot of people. No further comment? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. A request for event support is agenda item 8.9, the Tribunna Christmas Crew. There is a recommendation on page 77. Councillor McLeany.
Move that council approve the application for event support for Tribunna Christmas Crew Inc. for the Tribunna Christmas Parade and festivities on Friday the 13th, December 2024 towards the entertainment for the event.
Seconder. Councillor Edwards, thank you. Councillor McQueen, do you wish to speak?
I can't wait to see it. I wasn't there last year.
You weren't there or you were?
I wasn't. I was
Oh,
away. So.
Well, I can speak from experience, it was brilliant last year. Councillor Churchill.
I just think we need to put in a dollar amount
Yes.
for that.
Oh, there's no dollar amount.
No dollar
Sorry.
amount put in there.
How much?
Sorry, I should.
2,500.
Right.
So, if I may, Mayor?
Yes,
On page 75, for the purpose of requesting council to provide
Page
event
two.
funding of 2,500 to the Tribunal Christmas crew for the Tribunal Christmas parade and festivities on Friday.
So- councillor, you did move the motion, councillor Woods?
No, councillor
No, I
McQueen.
Oh, councillor McQueenie, we do need to have a dollar value in there, so are you comfortable with just including that in the motion?
Yes, and the amount that somebody just referenced.
Councillor Woods,
2,500.
councillor Woods mentioned $2,500 as event support. Yes? Councillor
Yes.
Woods confirming?
Yes.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
yes.
And was it councillor Edwards, I think you seconded, you're comfortable with that small amendment? Thank
So
you,
there's a-
councillor Woods?
A little bit more of a small amendment,
Yeah.
sorry. It says in the motion that's just been put that it's an event support.
Yes.
But it's actually in here, it's event funding,
Event funding.
so.
Mr. Porter, General Manager, do we need to identify that, or does event support as
And
funding?
funding or whatever.
If we include the $2,500, that covers it, do you think?
I don't think there's any issues with that. That's good enough.
Clear enough, once we put the dollar value in. Councillor Woods, you comfortable with that? Thank you. There's no further
No,
discussion.
no, yes,
Sorry?
yes,
Oh,
yes, I do. Yes, I like.
no.
Okay, now, just, the clarification, I thought that, this, Tribunal Christmas crew would be more applicable in the community grant application than an event application.
This is an event, councillor. It's a great event for the community, so my personal view is that it should be supported as an event rather than as a community grant.
Very well, very
Councillor Woods?
I know I've had a bit to say, but I just want to ask
No,
a
no,
question. It's nothing related to this, it's within the body of the report. It's up the top of page 77. To date, these are the events that council has funded. The Festival of Small Halls has got an asterisk beside their money. Is that, can anyone explain why?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's a little asterisk at the bottom of that table that says and any potential shortfall, so.
Oh, there it is, there, I
Yeah.
didn't see it. There you
Too
go.
close.
You need to read. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion on the Tribunal Christmas cruise event support for $2,500, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 9, there are no notices of motion. There are no petitions at agenda item 10. There are no questions on notice by councillors at agenda item 11.1. 11.2 is opportunity for questions or statements or comments or statements by councillors.
I did have a question. Just
Comments, no, it's not questions, you're quite right, councillor Woods, it is comments or statements by councillors. Do you have any?
I'd just like to congratulate Nabishino Township for hosting another very successful food and wine festival. It attracted over 3,000 people to the town or the area over the weekend. We received some really good media exposure, and that exposure highlighted that council was involved in the event and supported the event. So that was good for us to be seeing on the front foot. Another highlight was an announcement from the Minister for Sport and Events, Mr. Nick Duigan, who has announced a grant of $75,000, and that is to help promote and market and brand the festival over the next 3 years. So that is really good news for the festival. It'll be administered by Events Tasmania, and we've worked closely with them previously, so we've got a good working relationship with them, and it'll underpin the future of the festival. I know the board is particularly appreciative of council support. It's been mentioned numerous times, and the community is well aware that council does support that event. It's made known on all the advertising and all the releases that are done. And I'd also like to shout out to the 40 or so volunteers that make the event possible, and they give up their time for it. They have to do a bit the night before and then some sessions during the day, and they're great people, and it won't work without their help. So thanks very much to them.
Congratulations for the group for the funding. That's
I
great.
thought the photograph of the deputy mayor
Excuse
was
me?
in the newspaper
Mm.
was first class.
Thank you, councillor.
Councillor Flag.
So councillor Gregson,
I'd
please.
just like to concur with the deputy mayor with regard to the Vishno Food and Wine Festival. I did attend it and quite enjoyed it, but I did make a mistake, and the deputy mayor did correct me that I did misquote one of the bands. It was called The Pretty Things. I called them The Pretty Girls. I thought it was a play on the beautiful girls who are a Sydney band who are all boys. So I thought I'd clarify that. Now I'll get back to what my question is. With regard to attendance of councillors at OGMs, I'm of the opinion that if you miss 3 OGMs, you're terminated as a councillor.
What is an OGM?
Ordinary general meeting.
Ordinary council meeting.
Sorry,
No, I
councillor.
just wanted to know what he's talking about.
The ordinary general, just an ordinary council meeting. Yes.
Ordinary council. Okay. Now, does that mean they're in consecutive, or is that over a year?
No, it's
or-
consecutive.
It's consecutive.
I believe it's consecutive, and if the councillor hasn't, it only applies if the councillor has not submitted an apology or a leave of absence request. If that happens, and it happened not that long ago in another council in Tasmania for extenuating circumstances, then I think it's the general manager, it may be the mayor has to report that absence to the director of local government, and they make the decision as to whether the councillor has to be stood down or not.
Okay. So it's consecutive.
It is
Yeah,
consecutive.
good. I thought it
It
might
is.
have been over a year or something like that. That's good.
Sorry,
I thought it might have been over a year
no,
since.
it's
Yeah.
consecutive.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor McLeany.
Just a really quick plug for the Christmas movie at the Tribe Nativity, which will be on the 10th. That's right. And it's an old-fashioned It's a Wonderful Life, which I have never seen, but apparently quite lovely.
Can I please remind councillors that we do have our annual journal meeting that night at 5 o'clock as well.
Lucky it's at 6:30, so.
Oh, good. But
You go.
we have had record times in our annual general meeting. I think last year's went for 7.5 minutes or something along that lines, if I recall correctly, councillor Churchill. Any other statements or comments by councillors? Nothing further, thank you. We'll move on. So in agenda item 12, in accordance with the requirements of the local government meeting procedures, as mayor, I declare the meeting closed to the public in order to discuss following matters. Item 1, the minutes of the closed session. Item 2, application for councillor leave of absence. Item 3, Australia Day Awards. Item 4, the purchase of land, and item 5, the personnel matters. There is a recommendation on yes, councillor Woods, thank you.
Oh, I move that council moves into closed session at 4:13 PM.
Thank you, Ezra, seconder. Councillor McQueenie, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Mrs Kerr will confirm when the session's been terminated.